Ho, ho. Patriarchy has got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. Patriarchy has got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. Racism has got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. Racism has got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. Capitalism has got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. Capitalism has got to go.
My name is Margaret Prescott, and I'm part of the planning group for International Women's Strike LA 2020. And with me is Nancy Berlin. And both Nancy and I are just going to share some opening words, and then we'll really get on with the rest of the program. We want to welcome all of you, our cross-movement, multiracial planning group of incredible women have worked hard to make this event possible. And we have a beautiful program ahead that celebrates who we are, but doesn't shy away from the challenges we're facing. We've done the hard work of fusion. It's difficult, of bringing movements together that are often focused on their specific issues, because we know without us coming together across what divides us, we will not have the power to change the world, and change the world we must.
That's right.
In all of our movements, there's a class struggle going on. Those with more resources and visibility, and those with less. We cannot shy away from this reality, and we must keep our eyes focused on those of us with the least power, not only here in the United States, but around the world, including in the global South. The atrocities going on right now on the US-Mexico border, the continuing genocide against indigenous peoples and the theft of their lands, the racism and terror that generations of black people have had to survive and fight against, the reality of the US OAS orchestrated coup in Bolivia, with the destabilization of the government of Venezuela, to the suffering and resistance of the incredibly powerful grassroots movement for democracy in Haiti, to the fighting spirit despite all odds of the people of Yemen, Palestine, to the continents of Africa, the countries of Asia. Today, as women, we stand with our sisters around the world. We say we will not be silent. We are coming together across our divisions. We are fighting back, and we are determined that our beautiful planet will not continue to be destroyed by capitalism and imperialism that props up the patriarchy against us and whose focus is accumulating wealth at the expense of all of us. When 90% of women in Iceland went on strike in 1975, they shut the whole country down. They did it again in 1985 with similar results. But today, 25 years after the end of the UN Decade for Women, we know that the $1.9 trillion women produce in unwaged labor alone worldwide is not only not valued, it is not paid to us, and instead we're seen as charity cases. Or if we're doing full-time caregiving work for our children, or we are on welfare, or doing unwaged work for the land or for our communities, we're billed as unproductive scroungers. This work is hidden, but they lie, and they tell us it has no value, but this is the work that creates and sustains life. Our unwaged caregiving, along with the low-wage work we do, exceeds, according to the New York Times, the combined revenue of the 50 largest companies of the 2019 Fortune Global 500 list. Could you imagine that? In fact, that was just only in our unwaged work. That's not only what we're getting paid in the low-wage workers, home care workers, or as domestic workers, or doing gig economy jobs. We're getting ripped off, people. And now a study reported in The Guardian just days ago found that 9 out of 10 people are found to be biased against women. Yes, 9 out of 10. This is a global study. Dolores Huerta, it really hurt my heart to read that. Our environment is being destroyed. Our children are being discounted. But we, along with our sisters around the world, we intend to build our movements, to reclaim, to claw back every penny, to claw back every resource, to claw back every right that is ours. We are demanding a care income that, by the way, has been put forward in the Green New Deal for Europe. We want a world that is centered on the caring of people and our beautiful planet, not on war, occupation, destabilization, and greed. We have had enough. Have you had enough? We have had enough. We have had enough. So we're glad to be with you here today, despite all the scares of the virus, as we stand in solidarity with our sisters in over 50 countries around the world, who on International Women's Day will be taking action, including in Mexico, Italy, and Spain, where women are doing a full-blown strike of wage and unwaged work. In Chile, they are expecting tomorrow more than 1 million women on the streets in Chile. This is where we need to be. Those of us, finally, in the Global Women's Strike, who since 2000 have been coordinating International Women's Day events in LA, and since 2017 have joined with the International Women's Strike with holding these events in LA. We are glad to be here, all of us together, but there's a lot of work to be done. We know that change happens from the bottom up. It doesn't happen from the top down. We will not allow our movements to be directed away from us because of personal ambition, because of careerism, or we are ambitious for change, not simply personal gain. We are not having a hierarchy of oppression. We will keep our eyes on the prize, that of freedom for all, that is for the rights of Mother Earth. We stand together, as the great Sojourner Truth said, until woman gets her rights, man will be right. Then there will be peace on earth and goodwill to all. Si se puede. Si se puede.
All right. I just want to first tell you that you all look really beautiful out there. I'm Nancy Berlin, also from the planning committee for this International Women's Strike in Los Angeles. And you've just heard a lot about the rest of the world. What we wanted to remind you of is that we don't really know our history, or at least most of us don't. It's not taught to us, and so we don't know it. So there's a long history of women's struggle and celebrating International Women's Day, and I want to share some of that with you for those of you who may not know it, so that you can share with all your sisters. In this country, in the United States, we can trace the roots of the first International Women's Day back to 1911. And it was women workers from factories, from textile mills, from the garment industries and their homes who marched for equal rights and suffrage for women in the United States and in the Northeast. In slightly more recent times, in our own state, in Sonoma County in 1978, the school district there started participating in a Women's History Month that was designed around International Women's Day on March 8th. And that trend just went nationwide, and we started to see more places doing International Women's Week and Women's History Weeks. With a lot of pressure from women and women's organizations, we actually, with that grassroots pressure, pressured President Jimmy Carter to issue a proclamation declaring the week of March 8th as National Women's History Week. And then finally in 1987 it became Women's History Month. Of course, we really shouldn't have to ever declare something a Women's History Month or any other kind of month. We should always know our history and celebrate our history. So on this International Women's Day, we celebrate the contributions of women all across Southern California and all around the world. And we want to highlight the way that women are fighting back against the systemic oppression that we all exist under. And we want to shed light on the way women are facing this today. You know some of this, and I don't need to tell you, but so we all know, that 1 out of 8 women in the U.S. live in poverty, that 75% of the poor in the U.S. are women and children, and 1 in 3 single mothers live in poverty. Now that is a shame. That is a national shame. And 10 million women a year are victims of domestic violence. So to mark this International Women's Day, We've been doing these international women's strikes since 2017. And as Margaret told you, this is happening all over the world now in over 50 countries, taking action for our rights, for living wages, including for mothers and other caregivers, to an end to violence, murder, and disappearance of women, for an end to war, and for the rights of Mother Earth, and of feminism for the 99%, which is us. These international women's strikes started in 2000. We started celebrating them. There was a one-day strike in Ireland, and then in Poland, and you heard more about what's going on in Chile, and we're just going to keep on keeping on. We want to really thank you all for being here and carry on this history.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. A real pillar of this event. We want to remind everybody, you know, we've got various activities going on. You could register to vote. You could get a massage. You could even get a tarot card reading. You could make art, okay? There's a lot going on, so we encourage you to visit the booths at any time. And of course, porta potties are further back. And today, for the first time at these events, we have a text to donate. All of us are volunteers. This is not a funded event, okay? We're not getting government, city, county, state, whatever money for this. So the people who have worked on this are all volunteers. We all put in our own little money. We had our little GoFundMe, but we're asking people now to, if you can, pull out your cell phones and text IWSLA to 44-321. We'll make those announcements to remind you, because we're in the red. We still have to finish covering the cost of this event, so please help us out. We'll go on now with our program.
Yes, and so just one or two other announcements, but before I do those, if you are a platform reader and you're not here, they're all here. Oh, look at that. Cool, come on up. And I hope you all have your red bracelets for the day. If you don't, look around the sea of red. There's some red armbands as well.
The International Women's Strike is a network of women that emerged through planning a day of action from March 8, 2017 in more than 50 different countries. This is the 4th year.
In the spirit of that renewed radicalism, solidarity, and internationalism, the International Women's Strike US, we are women who have been marginalized and silenced by decades of neoliberalism directed towards the 99% of women. Working women inside and outside of the home, women of color, Native, dis and differently abled, immigrant, Muslim, lesbian, cis, queer, and trans women.
We see our efforts as part of a new international feminist movement that organizes resistance not just against Trump and his misogynist policies, but also against the conditions that produced Trump, namely the decades-long economic inequality, poverty, criminalization and policing, racial and sexual violence, discriminatory immigration policies, and imperial wars abroad.
We aim to build relationships of solidarity between diverse organizations of women and all those who seek to build a global feminist working class movement. We come from many political traditions, but are united around the following common principles.
Dear sister comrades from all over the world, we call for building common strategies to keep feeding the feminist rebellion, which is spreading all over the world against domination, exploitation, occupation, and dispossession.
Now we will share with you excerpts from Global IWS Call 2020, IWS is International Women's Strike, drafted by our sisters in Latin America. The IWS US is a signer of the call along with sisters in other parts of the world. Today we find ourselves at a historic global crossroads, one marked by the threat of the far-right and neo-fascist groups, whose plan is to become the new managers of neoliberalism, which is showing its most deadly face. This far-right is fueling hatred against racialized communities, women, lesbian, and trans communities, and it aims at strengthening the racism sown in the times of colonialism and patriarchy. Yet, At this crossroads, we could choose another path, a path built by our feminist, plural nation, transnational, and anti-racist power.
Even though we come from very different social and political backgrounds, we are united in the struggle against violence and by our determination to end it, by putting forward an updated political program for the exploited to rebuild a new, shared, and global struggle.
This is a call to revolt and affirm our power to say no, to say enough, and to show the way forward, synchronized in the same dance, a dance that is a condemnation that weaves together our multiple stories and scars, pointing to those who are truly responsible for the management of misery.
We call to claim back our land from the extractivism that animates the ongoing processes of colonization. Extractivism is expanding worldwide, and it is strengthened by the criminal and invisible alliances of capital and patriarchy. Its main targets are the freedoms and rights of women and other dissident communities, and the experiences of communal life that arises in our territories.
My name is Shani Ibadi, and we are the Women of Answer Coalition. We fight for the true liberation of working women around the world. An end to gender violence. All women deserve a life free of all forms of gender violence, domestic and institutional, in the streets and in the workplace. Working women, girls, trans women, differently abled women, indigenous women, and women of color face the worst aspects of direct institutionalized violence, be it in the form of police brutality, immigration raids, and day-to-day violence in the form of state policies that create and consolidate poverty in our communities. Against all such state capitalist and personal violence, we demand that our life and labor be treated with dignity, for they form the basis of this society. Thank you.
That's a good fight for a dark girl on the surfboard in the Rocky River. Y'all poolside, we still deliver. That's a Wonder Woman. Superhero was a black man and said y'all near. We gon' save them all. And that Turner Tubman for the hate you give. Still thuggin', that Shakira like Giovanni wrote it. Nick Key, that's the real poet. Black life, we still going. They mad, we still flowing. Black joy, euphoria. We wanna smile like Gloria. That's whole mama. Word of my mama. That's a mother load. Mothership, motherland. It's the mother. 90s flick, 96, said it all, boy, I'm Jada P with the box of braids. If I ain't squeezed, that's R.I.P. Please kill the noise. If it's God-given, it can't be destroyed. I've been working all time, hey. Gotta get it going, hey. Make it go round, hey. Make it go round, hey.
We stand for full reproductive justice for all women, cis and trans. We want complete autonomy over our bodies and full reproductive freedom. We demand free abortion without conditions and affordable health care for all, irrespective of income, race, or citizenship status. The history of forced sterilization of indigenous women and women of color in this country goes hand in hand with the attack on abortion rights. Reproductive justice for us means the freedom to choose both whether to have children and to have them at the time of our choosing.
All over the world, millions of women and girls are forced to work for slave wages in dangerous sweatshops and other hell factories that kill thousands every year. In the United States, 46% of union members are women, and a majority of them are women of color. All women, irrespective of citizenship status, sexuality, or race, must have equal pay for equal work. Recognition of and resources for the unwaged caring work we all do, free universal child care, paid maternity leave, sick leave, paid family leave, and the freedom to organize a fighting union in the workplace. We demand the end of forced labor and the abolition of child labor. As working women who hold up half the sky, We refuse to be divided over the kind of labor we perform, whether skilled or unskilled, formal or informal, sex work or domestic work.
Working women, raise your fist. Now's the time we must resist. Working women, raise your fist. Now's the time we must resist. Working women, raise your fist. Now's the time we must resist.
I want to talk to you about full social provisioning. Decades of neoliberal policies have seen the violent dismantling of social provisioning that has affected all women. While our working lives have been made increasingly precarious, social services that might have provided a safety net against such harsh exploitation of labor have either been attacked or completely removed. Against these attacks, we demand an expansive restructuring of the United States welfare system to serve the needs of the majority, such as universal health care, robust unemployment and Social Security benefits, housing, food security, and free education for all. Welfare is a human right. We demand that the welfare system work to support our lives rather than shame us when we access such rights.
For the students, money for jobs and education!
Not for war and occupation!
Money for jobs and education!
Not for war and occupation!
Money for jobs and education!
Not for war and occupation!
Money for jobs and education!
Not for war and occupation!
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Trudy Goodwin, and today I'm here representing the Black Alliance for Just Immigration. They have sent us a statement that I will read for you. Greetings of solidarity with the International Global Women's Strike in celebration of International Women's Day on this fabulous day in South Central Los Angeles. We're known as BAJI, the largest Black-led immigrants' rights organization in the U.S. We organize, educate, and advocate for almost 10 million immigrants, refugees, and their families living in the U.S. We are honored to lift up the sacrifices and achievements of Black immigrant women, especially the generation we affectionately call the aunties, who are the powerhouses of our communities in our home countries and communities abroad. Black women and girls are the heart and soul of our movements for liberation wherever we are living. And we are disproportionately involved in underappreciated care work, domestic work, home health care, lower wage health care jobs, child care, and care in our homes and communities. Yet when folks speak of immigrant care workers, they don't think or consider Black immigrant women, but we are there. We are leaders in the fight against femicide, female genital mutilation, violence against our LGBTQ siblings, domestic violence, religious-based violence, and state-sanctioned violence against our community members. Come on! People are so good, what is going on in their head. Don't want to see me live a life, they want to see me dead. I can't wear a hoodie at night because they might think that I am a suspect. They want me to fight for my rights, but hate it when we protest. They talk about our crime rates and the bad aspect of the Black body, but we got Gucci out here promoting the Black face. And the man that happens to be white got let it focus rape case. Now that's not fair. Now what you think of that? We should be adjacent. These are just straight facts. Yeah. Come on, put your hands together. Woo! Come on. Self-defense.
Wave your hands in the air. Put some peace up in here. Hey, Thank you.
Communities for Civil Rights Movement and Natives for Sovereign Rights were working on bridging the gap between the two communities. They acknowledged that they were a part of the same struggle. Indigenous peoples acknowledged back then that together that we were fighting the same fight against poverty, racism, displacement, and violence. That is still the case today in 2020. Natives, Black and brown communities fall victim to civil injustices more than any other group in society. We see this clearly with this administration, an uprising of racism. It has been very visible from Indigenous children from the South being locked in cages, being treated in inhumane ways to Natives' territories, continuation of extraction of the land, and violations of their rights in all forms, to Black men and women being murdered by the police all over the U.S., to murdered and missing women in Indigenous and Black communities. Racism is very much alive in America. It's time for us to unite and have each other's backs. For far too long, the colonizers have used tactics to divide us. We have to see this, to stop the violence in our communities, to instill in future generations to not have hate in their heart for those who are not the same color, and to show our oppressors enough is enough. Our representation here is an effort to bring Indigenous and Black community to share their stories here today on this stage. This is why we invited Jordan Marie Daniel and Monique Orozco, who are advocates for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls.
Thank you, Irene Antantes, and it's been an honor working with you as part of the Poor People's Campaign and part of the planning group. I introduced myself before. Many of you may not know that back in the mid-1980s, I founded a coalition called the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders. So I'm not going to get through this one too well because there are 200 Black women murdered and missing in a 40-mile radius in South Los Angeles. And for a long time, we've been wanting to get together with our Indigenous sisters because we know that across the so-named border in Canada, as well as here, Indigenous communities have been having this pain of missing and murdered Indigenous women. So we're really proud that I think this is the first time that we have family members of an Indigenous family member who has lost her child, and we have several family members from the Alexander family who have lost their children. And standing with us is Susan Burton, who was part of Susan's history was that she was a victim of the crack epidemic here in South LA and survived by the grace of God, because some of the victims of one of these serial murders was somebody Susan knew before she was out of prison and founded a new way of life. And since then, she has never forgotten us. When I need some advice, when I need some help, I know I could call my sister. So we thought that we needed to start and have the Indigenous women speak first. It is only right because we are on their land. So we welcome their voices.
Good day. My name is Jordan Marie Brings Through It versus Daniel. I come from Koichasha Oyate, the Lower Brule Sioux tribe as it's federally known. I'm here to be a voice for the thousands of voices who cannot speak and be here today. I'm here to help elevate the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives, and I am one of many that is doing this work to help bring justice and healing and accountability for our communities and for the families that are suffering from this injustice. I'm a community organizer and I am a runner. And more recently, over the last year, I've been sharing my love and passion of running with helping to raise awareness by dedicating my miles that I race in prayer for missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. In more of my recent races, I was able to dedicate my first mile and run in prayer for a young woman, Cherokee Creek, whose family is here today, who we'll be hearing from later. And it was an honor to do that and to run for our relatives, to be running for justice. This injustice and heartbreaking reality knows no colonial borders. It's happening everywhere. It's an international epidemic and a crisis. In 2016, just to give this more perspective, 5,712 missing cases of relatives, and only 116 were logged into the Department of Justice database. And this is unacceptable. As Anita of Sovereign Bodies Institute put it very well and accurately, our missing relatives, brown, black, Indigenous, they go missing 3 times. Once in life, once in data, and once in the media. And we need to bring this visibility and raise awareness, and we need to support each other and come together as communities, because we can't remain siloed in what we do. This injustice is happening everywhere. Over 520 years of this historical violence has been happening, and Indigenous communities, black communities, and marginalized communities have been suffering from the processes and the systemic injustice that's happening. And it has to end. This is too heartbreaking for us to lose our loved ones, and having to be here on stage to talk about this, to talk about something so hard, to demand that we be seen, and for our voices to be seen, and to demand justice, and so that we can support the families that are suffering from this. This can't go on anymore. And as we talk about climate and social justice, you can't have one without the other. And what's happening in our climate justice movement, we're advocating to stop these pipelines, and these pipelines are raping our earth. The communities and the corporations, the big money, the fossil fuel industry is raping our Unchimaka, grandmother earth. And with those pipelines and these dirty infrastructure projects, they're bringing man camps. These man camps bring high rates of sexual and domestic violence, homicide, and trafficking to our tribal communities and the border towns beyond borders. This has got to stop, and we need to come together and work together as communities to support each other and be there for each other. And it is a great honor to be here with all of you, and thanks for hearing our voices. Thank you.
What are you doing? What are we doing? Our sisters are under attack.
My name is Tess Caraca, which is Nahuatl, meaning glass reed. Last year, about a year ago, I was instructed by my ancestors to compose a speech. It was a speech that was not supposed to be written for myself, but for the community. A community of survivors, a community of women, a community of educated women warriors who would be taking charge, transforming ourselves, our children, our families, our neighborhoods, our towns, our cities, and this very nation. I stand here in solidarity with this family, on both of my sides really, and all families who have lost loved ones because of the grotesque and disgusting epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. I stand in solidarity with all the previous presenters, all the sisters here on the stage, all the family members, all the children, and all of you here today. Thank you for listening to each of us. Thank you. I come as a missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls advocate. As previously shared, our sisters, nieces, cousins, mothers, granddaughters are going missing, being killed, and there are no authorities taking it seriously. Local officers say they're runaways or they're prostitutes. Federal authorities purposefully miscategorize victims or claim they had something to do with their own demise. They went looking for it. And so the tragedy continues. We need to take the steps necessary to change this. What happens when our men can't protect our communities and our authorities can't be trusted? What happens? Women have to step up. So today I'm going to give you 3 ways of doing that in the Southern California area. The first way, contact Indigenous Women Rising. We service the LA and Anaheim areas and work with Fundación de Sobrevivientes de Tráfico Humano, an organization that combats human and sex trafficking. Together, we help families navigate the process of searching for their loved one. 2, contact Women's Healing Resource Clinic. We service the Northeast San Fernando Valley areas, focusing on domestic violence and mental health education. In this way, we're a resource that helps families confidently say, my daughter was not a runaway because of domestic violence. My daughter was not a victim of mental health issues and cannot be blamed for being taken. 3, become a California State Certified Domestic Violence Advocate, become a notary public, become a licensed process server, become a one-stop shop, if you will, for families who are trying to locate their girls. In this way, we are a viable, licensed resource for families and provide credence for them when they do approach authorities and tell them to go back and try again. Do this because the authorities cannot be bothered to help. I'm bothered. I hope you're bothered. We're all bothered. We're all here. We're all volunteers. No one's paying us for this. But I think that our children, I know that our children, our women, all of our families need to come first, especially our First Nation women and all of our women of color.
To have the family of Alicia Alexander here. She was one of the victims of the so-named Grim Sleeper. Alicia's mother, Mary, is a bit too emotional right now. It's difficult for her to say some words, and I understand that. You could imagine the trauma these families have been through, and the family has stood strong with her. Alicia's sister is here. Alicia's brother is here. We know it's International Women's Day, but we think it's right that the family members and the men stand with us here. And the Alexanders, they have been with us before there was an arrest on the trial. They were at the press conferences. They were passing out information. They were down at the court each and every day. And our heart really goes out to them, and we're very honored that they're here. And Porter Alexander, do you just want to say a few words? Do you want to say?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Mr. Alexander, and I just wanted to mention just a few things. I just wanted to say that, yes, I'm a victim of my daughter being lost approximately 32 years ago. And she still lies heavily on my heart. And this is something that people don't realize, that how you have to bear this atrocity that has been placed upon you. You just got to find strength in order to endure. And like I say, that, you know, it's this person that did this atrocity was not that far from us. He was walking distance from our home. And I always felt that he was somewhere near, but I just didn't know he was right down the street. This is something that we need to look at and understand, that we can only beat this here by working together and understanding and watching the neighborhood that you live in. And this is the only way that this will overcome, because the police that we have, they only come after the fact, after it was all over. So I say to you that anytime you see something that you look pretty strange, take note of it, because if he's in this neighborhood, he has no problem with knowing where he's going. Thank you very much.
Dolores Huerta, we will be hearing from her a bit later, but she wanted to say a few words to share this solemn moment with us.
Thank you. And all of us, I think, together, we can all grieve for the lost souls. And we know we have to work very hard to make sure that this femicide will not continue. Because as we know, it's been happening for years, and somehow they just take it for granted. And every time that we pray for people that have been murdered, whether it be in war, whether it be by racism, the kinds of violence, we have to remember that every single day in the United States of America and throughout the world, women are being murdered just because they are women. And so we have to think, how can we stop this? And one of the things that we have to do is start, I think, in our educational system, especially teaching young men that women are human beings, that women are not sex objects, that women are not their servants. and that we as women have a right to life just like anybody else does. And it's upon each and every one of us and to console these families and to let them know that their losses are not lost forever, because we have to commit ourselves to say that we will work not only to remember their memories, but also to know that their lives were not in vain. Thank you. Ashe.
That's being given to Lawana Panther.